You ever notice how sometimes two news stories pop up that seem completely different, but when you think about them together, they start to paint a really interesting picture of what's going on in the world?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, they start to connect in ways you wouldn't expect.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. Two stories first, we've got Michelle Obama reflecting on the pushback she got for her school lunch program. Kind of surprising, right? I mean, who would be against healthier food for kids? And then we're going to jump over to the JFK assassination, specifically those recently declassified documents and why there's still so much fascination surrounding that event even after all these years.
Yeah, those are two really different topics. Makes you wonder what they might have in common, right?
Exactly. It's all about understanding the bigger picture, the underlying currents, if you will. And to do that, we're going to be looking at some recent news coverage on both of these topics. No need to get too technical with citations and sources. We're just going to have a good old-fashioned conversation about what we found.
Sounds good to me. I'm always up for a good chat.
So let's start with those school lunches. Michelle Obama was recently on a podcast, and she was talking about how genuinely shocked she was at the level of opposition her Healthy School Lunch initiative faced. You'd think that aligning it with the White House agenda would have made it a slam dunk, but that wasn't the case.
It's really interesting that she thought the connection would automatically equal widespread support. It makes you think about how complex the political landscape really is, even when it comes to something like kids' health.
Right. So what were the main changes the program was pushing for? You know, the stuff that got people so riled up.
Well, it was really about emphasizing healthier options. More whole grains, fruits and vegetables, making sure the dairy was low fat, cutting back on sodium and fat overall. And of course, there was the portion control aspect, which always gets people talking.
Oh yeah, portion control is a hot button issue for sure. Some people feel like it's overstepping boundaries, you know?
Definitely. And that plays right into the whole nanny state argument that came up, the idea that the government was trying to dictate what people could eat, even if it was in schools.
And then, of course, it got caught up in the whole partisan divide. Like somehow school lunches became a left versus right issue, which is pretty wild when you think about it. What are your thoughts on how that happened?
Well, it really highlights how easily issues can get politicized, even when the original intent seems pretty straightforward. It kind of makes you wonder about the role of government in individual health, you know? How much influence should they have, even when it's for the well-being of children?
Absolutely. It's a tricky balance, for sure. But it's interesting to see how this all ties into current conversations about food and health. You know, someone like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the current HHS secretary, he's all about food transparency with his AMENA movement. He wants to get rid of artificial additives and make sure people know what's actually in their food.
Yeah, it seems like there's a growing awareness of those issues now. People are paying more attention to what they're eating and where their food comes from.
Definitely. And despite all the controversy, Michelle Obama still believes the program had a positive impact. You know, the reports show that nutritional standards did improve, and those food labels got a much-needed update, the first one in almost 50 years. So even with all the pushback, there were some wins.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even when things get messy, positive change is still possible. Now let's switch gears completely and talk about the JFK assassination. During the Trump administration, a whole bunch of documents related to the assassination were declassified, over 30,000 pages. It's like, this story just won't go away.
I know, right? It's been decades, but the fascination, the mystery, it's still there. Even though the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, there are all these other theories floating around: Lyndon B. Johnson, the CIA, organized crime, you name it. Why do you think this event still has such a hold on people's imaginations?
Well, I think part of it is just the sheer magnitude of the event. The assassination of a president is a traumatic experience for any country. It leaves a scar. And then you've got the whole secrecy element. The CIA has a history of being less than transparent, and that's definitely fueled suspicion and conspiracy theories.
Oh yeah, for sure. So what kind of stuff are we actually learning from these documents? Any bombshells?
Well, there's a lot of detail about Oswald's activities before the assassination, his attempts to defect to Cuba, his interactions with the Soviets. It really fleshes out his story. And there's also information about covert CIA operations that were going on at the time, some of which were pretty controversial.
So for someone like you who studies history, what's the general consensus on these new documents? Do they fundamentally change our understanding of what happened?
Most historians seem to agree that while these documents provide valuable context, especially about what the CIA and FBI knew leading up to the assassination, they probably won't overturn the conclusion that Oswald was the lone gunman. However, the fact that they were released at all is a big deal. It's a step towards greater transparency, which is always a good thing.
So here we have these two stories, one about changing what kids eat in schools and facing a whole lot of unexpected resistance, and the other about this historical event that continues to captivate and divide people even after all these years. What do you think connects these two stories? What's the bigger takeaway for our listeners?
It really makes you think about the complexities of change, right? Whether it's about influencing public health or trying to understand our own history, it's rarely a straightforward process. And then there's the question of trust. Trust in institutions, trust in government, and that constant search for truth, whether it's about the food we eat or the events that have shaped our nation.
Those are some really insightful points. So listeners, hopefully this little deep dive has given you some food for thought. These are definitely issues worth pondering. What role should the government play in shaping our lives, our health, and our understanding of the past? And how do we navigate those complex questions of trust and truth in a world where information is constantly evolving? It's something to keep in mind as you go about your day.
Absolutely. There's always more to uncover, more to learn.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring.
And keep asking questions.